from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I am Reverend Charles Harrison with Reverend Terry Webster Sr. And on the episode today, we will be talking to Deputy Chief Kendale Adams of IMPD. Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and with me is my co-host, Reverend Terry Webster Sr., and we're so honored today to have with us Deputy Chief of IMPD, Kendale Adams. He is a friend of ours, and certainly we have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Pastor Harrison. You know what I always say, it's Friday. He died on Friday, but Sunday's coming. He's going to get up from the grave.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be here.
Amen.
It's Friday.
Amen. So glad to have you here with us. Let's talk because, the last 2 weeks is, we have been, there's been a lot of conversation about the police action shootings, and I think the number is 10 since August. What is it, 14, 13 since this year that we've had? 14. Okay. I'm not for sure. Is that a number that is typical of a year, or have we had more this year? But certainly a lot of attention has been paid to what has happened since August.
Yeah, yes, sir. And let me just open by saying thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always good to be around pastors. Reminds me of my upbringing. It's such a big part of my life. When you said that, he rose on Sunday, it just reminded me of my old pastor. So thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be around you guys. So, you asked a couple questions. So I think in terms of what we've seen this year, we've seen 14 officer-involved shootings. Just to give you some comparison, last year we had 10 officer-involved shootings. In the year prior to that, we had 13 officer-involved shootings. In 2021, we had 3 that were fatal of those 13. And then in 2022, we had 1 of those 10 that were fatal. So, to answer your question, it really is anywhere from 7 to around that teen number that we see in terms of police action shootings. When I first came downtown to work under Chief Roach, I think it was late 2014, 2015, we had somewhere around 20. 21 officer-involved shootings, and that was extremely high for us. And so,
when was that?
I think it was around 2015, 2016. Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was quite high, and then we kind of dipped down. But you got to remember, that was around Aaron Bailey. And that's when we started talking about with our training, time, distance, and cover. And so, it's natural to kind of see that dip after that high that we had. So that kind of gives you some perspective in terms of what we're seeing in officer-involved shootings. I think anytime, officer uses their gun, we're concerned. And I have no problem, Chief Taylor has no problem with us taking a critical look at these shootings to determine if there's something that can be done on our end. I always say that police are going to be held accountable. We have all these layers of accountability, whether it be internally, whether it be externally, through the judicial system. But, I like we talked the other day, I think we also have to have some conversations in our community about what does accountability look like for our community.
I think, Chief, I think, and you're right, police will and should be held accountable. I think oftentimes the optics of how things look sometimes blur the community because they don't understand the system. Can you talk just a little bit about the system and what it takes to get to where we are, to where we can get some sort of conviction or that kind of thing?
Yeah, so you really have 2 paths anytime an officer uses deadly force. You have the criminal path, which is usually involves the coroner's office, the crime lab, Marion County Prosecutor's Office. And that can be both criminal for the officer who is seen as a target of a criminal investigation, and it also can be criminal for an individual if they live. That process usually is the most public process.
Okay.
It takes a while. Officers are afforded the same right because they are a target of a criminal investigation. They're afforded the same right that you would be,
right,
if you were the target of a criminal investigation. So that means to include providing a statement to our CERT team, our Critical Incident Response Team. So every time we have a shooting, we have specialized detectives that are on a rotation. They are summoned to the scene to start that investigation. Typically, we have both the prosecutor's office and the crime lab that respond with us. And so we will engage with the officers. So the witnessing officers are just like any witness. They provide a statement to the investigator. However, the officer who used force is the target of a criminal investigation and therefore is afforded the right to give a statement.
Okay.
And he or she can invoke their right to not provide a statement.
Okay.
And so that's the criminal process will go forward. We will, our investigators will submit what we call a probable cause affidavit to the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, who then reviews that information and makes a determination on whether he really has four options. He can either no file, he can direct file, which means he can file charges on the suspect and or the officer, and we've seen that here recently.
Right.
He can send it to a grand jury, or he can get a special prosecutor. Those are really the four options he has. And in the administrative side, we can talk about later, but that's a separate route.
Okay.
And the important distinction on the administrative side is the officer who used deadly force is compelled to give a statement.
Okay.
They have to give a statement to the administrative side as a condition of employment.
Right.
But that statement cannot be shared on the criminal side. And the reason I say it's important is because often in the immediacy of any shooting, what we're dealing with is the criminal side. And so oftentimes when people are saying, hey, what happened, right? We're having to piece together the story without the officer's statement. Mm-hmm. And that's important.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because what the officer perceived, what he saw, what he knew, why he made that decision, on the criminal side, we won't get. And that's an important distinction.
Okay. That's
so I can keep going, but obviously I think you guys want to jump in here.
No, keep going on that because I have some other questions.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on the criminal side, often within the first 24 hours, when we get to the scene, the target officer is usually talking with our post team. They're talking with their FOP representative, which is typically a lawyer. The FOP have attorney. And we're processing the witnessing officers, looking at body cam now. That's why body cam is so important, because prior to body cam, you can see how difficult it is for us to put a picture together what happened.
Right.
Now, several months after, they've given a statement to the admin side, usually within 72 hours. The administrative side will start to put, they've got a little bit more detail. They start to put that together. But I'm just giving you what's happening in that first 24, why sometimes it's so difficult to get a complete story. So that's why I say body cams are really important, because they help fill in the gaps that we may or may not know. So within that first 24 hours, we're going to make sure the officer gets to wellness. Our police officer support team is dispatched to the area. We do a gun exchange with the officer. We do a ammo count. So crime lab actually counts down their ammo, and they give them a replacement weapon. We're usually the Marion County prosecutor, one of the screening prosecutors is on scene. We're looking at body cam. They're trying to make a determination, and those are independent of one another. They're not merged together. They may look at that and say, yeah, we got some challenges here that they're going to start to process on their end.
Right.
Our criminal investigators are trying to collect all the information. And lastly, they're trying to give all that information to the chiefs so that we can talk, intelligently to the community. Yeah. But you can see why sometimes there are some gaps. And we've been very intentional to say information's preliminary. what I think people are expecting is within 24 to 48 hours, you're going to have a complete picture of what happened. And a lot of times we do.
Right.
But sometimes there's some gaps. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes you look at these body cams and you're like, man, I just don't understand how they arrived at that decision. Well, unfortunately, we'll get that a little bit later when they talk to the admin side. So I just wanted to paint that picture for you.
So last night, Assistant Chief Bailey and yourself made statements concerning what had happened, or Assistant Chief Bailey. So that was based on the information that y'all had at the time, and you looked at the body cam?
Yep.
Okay.
So we, one of the things we do when we get there as chiefs is, because somebody has to go out and talk to the community about what has occurred. So we try to get a download real quick from the investigators. We watch body cam. We're asking questions because we know we're going to be asked some of these questions when we talk to the media. We're trying to get some kind of history on the individual. What was the crime? So we're trying to get all that information so that when we get up, we can try to give you as much information as we know. And oftentimes we do. We give you everything we know at the time. Now, again, sometimes there's some gaps that, we just can't answer because we haven't talked to the officer.
Several questions that I have, and just real quick. I think what you hear in the community a lot is, and thank you for giving the background, because I didn't know what we normally averaged a year as far as police action shootings. And were we seeing something abnormal this year, or has it been normal? My question is, since I think the last year of Mayor Ballard, around 2015, we've seen 9 years of surging violence in the city.
Yeah.
So my question is there a correlation between the escalation in violence in the city that we're seeing overall, and maybe more interactions and encounters with law enforcement that lead to police action shootings? To me, the work I do with 10 Point, there seems to be more guns out there today than ever, and I'm not for sure that everybody out there has a moral compass and a regard for the sanctity of human life. So are people less likely today, or some, to obey the commands of law enforcement, and it becomes more confrontational? And I don't know if that's also a product of George Floyd and Michael Brown, those incidences, nationwide, where it seems like the tension between the black community and law enforcement has gotten worse since then.
I think it's all that.
Okay, all that? Okay.
I think it's all the above.
Okay.
I definitely think there are a lot of guns in our community, both legally possessed and illegally possessed. Our infatuation with guns across this state, across this country, continues to be a challenge as we, not only deal with it here, but we think about Maine. And what's going on in Maine and the manhunt for that individual. Right. And again, you could go back and every urban community across this country is dealing with gun violence. Some more than others. Luckily, here for the last 3 years, our criminal homicides are down. So, we always talk about these two numbers. You got the murders, or criminal homicides, as most people call them, and you got homicides. Right. So, while we are encouraged that criminal homicides have been down for the last couple years, I'm also concerned that homicides in general are right about where they were last year. Right, absolutely. So the total number of homicides is about the same. Our detectives have investigated over 170 homicides. So what that's telling me is that the number, while encouraging that the criminal homicides is going down, we are still concerned that there is a level of violence in our community that continues to permeate. And so you can only logically make that connection that our officers who are out there every day are going to face more violent people, more people with guns. Right. And a number of these shootings, really there's only one that I can think of right off the top of my head where they were unarmed. Okay. And that's important. And I'm not saying that because you're armed, because I understand people in our community say, hey, well, everybody can have a gun now. And they're absolutely right. And I would say that of the 3 million contacts we have, less than 1% end like this. Now, as a community, we focus on these 14, and we should.
Right.
And again, I said this the other day. The reality is there are systems in place to check if an officer's done wrong or done rogue, or we feel like that it wasn't what we term reasonable. Right. But I say to you, what is the check and balances on the community? When do we say to people it's not okay to run from a lawful order of a police officer? I get it. Some people are scared. Some people say, but that can end tragically for both police and the community.
I don't think those conversations are happening on our side. I don't. You know, I can say when I was young and in my teens, you know, we were always told to, whatever they say, police, you do it, even if they lock you up, because we will handle it from there.
That's exactly right.
You know, as the community leaders, you know, and that's what I tell my children, Jeremiah and Jalen and Shaylin and Terrell. You know, if they lock you up, you go ahead and go to jail, and if they done something wrong, your daddy can handle it from there.
Preach. To answer your question, officer, to me, when do you say that it's not okay? I think you have to start saying that when your children are young.
Yes.
I think so to answer your question, my answer would be that needs to come from the home. Yeah. And then if it have to be expanded upon in the community support by leaders, we support that too, but it have to be, you have to tell your children in the home what to do. Yeah.
And how to do it. And I don't want people to think that I'm saying that police are always right. Right. Because we know they're not right. That's why we have body cams. Right. That's why we have these measures in place, that if a police officer gives you an unlawful order or gives you, treats you badly, we have things in place to deal with that. But what we can't allow is to say it's okay to run from the police. Right. It's okay to fight the police. Yeah. It's okay to pull out a gun and shoot at the police. No. That's not okay.
No, that's not okay.
And we have to have those conversations. So, from my perspective, we have plenty of conversations. I'm in those conversations where we say to the police, what are you doing about X, Y, and Z? And I would say that we need to continue to have those conversations about, we talked about it, implicit bias training. Right. Is implicit bias involved in some of these? I think that's a good question. I think that's a good question that we have to answer. But what I would say is we continually have those conversations with police departments about what they can do with training, what they can do with the hiring of officers, what we can do about the psychology of the officers to make sure we have the right officer. But where are we having conversations with when we see people pull guns on police and shoot? When are we saying to the community that's not okay? So
I would say to that, officer, I think you and I talked the other day. That's why it's important to have conversations like this.
Yes, absolutely.
So that now, as a homework assignment, Pastor Harrison and I can take from this conversation. In support of the officers in our community, hey, let's have these conversations.
Yes.
And let's say it's not okay. So that's why it's good to have conversations like this.
I agree with you 100%. I'll say, we've seen in some of these where officers have been indicted.
Right, that's true.
And so my I think what I'm saying, I guess, is for the police side, as a policeman, let me say, let me take the police out of it. As a black man in this community, has lived in this community his whole life, grew up at 29th and Boulevard, I'm concerned. I'm concerned anytime we take force, whether they're black or white. I'm concerned when we kill someone. I'm concerned when the police officers are killed. I'm concerned. Yes. And I have no problem with that. But I also am concerned about a lack of accountability for some of those in our community.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Terry Webster Sr. and Reverend Charles Harrison. And our special guest today is IMPD Deputy Chief Kendale Adams. And we're talking about the police action shooting. I want to have a real conversation about this implicit bias because I think personally that, unfortunately, because when we turn on the nightly news, mostly we see either the suspect or the victim of violent crimes tend to be black. Y'all probably have 2 or 3 non-fatal shootings a night. Sometimes they turn into homicides. I wonder what the impact is on officers who go to these scenes and what y'all are seeing on a nightly basis. How much does it impact the officer when he's in a situation that he may consider threatening? Does that implicit bias kick in? And I say that because the other night I was out with 10 Point. We was on a dark street. Young lady was walking down the street. She seen 4 black men walking down. She really couldn't see the vest, I don't think. And she immediately moved to the street.
Wow.
Because she was concerned, I think, about us 4 black men walking down the street. It wasn't until she passed us and noticed the vest that she started to feel comfortable and knew it was 10 Point. But there seemed to be a bias that I need to get out in the middle of the street because I don't know who these 4 black men are. I wonder how much of that is impacting officers on the street who daily see some horrible things.
Yep.
And coming from our community, does it impact sometimes their judgment? And I'm not saying in a negative way, but are they more cautious, more defensive? I don't know what word to use when they go to some of these scenes.
More fearful.
Or fearful, yeah, more fearful, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you think. Oh, go ahead. You think about what our officers are working in very hyper-vigilant communities, or let me say hyper-vigilant times that are more violent than I ever experienced in my 26 years.
Okay.
And they're going from run to run to run, where people are shot, people are beat up, some communities, lack of cooperation. And for some of them, this is the first experience they've had with that kind of outcomes, so to speak.
Right.
As we talked about our agency over the years, we've tried to recruit. Everybody knows we're a little short, 300 officers short. We were an older department just a few years ago. And we, thankfully, Mayor Hogsett and the City County Council have hired nearly 800 officers. 700, I think, is the number. So my point is, we're really getting a younger police department. We're becoming younger.
Okay.
Because, you have 700. There's only, I think, the last number I looked at, we're at 1,500 something. Okay. So half and half. Basically, we're about almost 50% we've turned over to the police department. So I say all that to say that as we get these younger officers on, you have to believe that some of that factors into it. Their experiences. Have they been around people of color?
Right.
Have they been around urban environments where just the reality, a gun is like anything. I mean, it's just a normal course of being in the hood, right?
Right.
And their exposure to that.
Okay.
So we have to do, we have to continue to do a yeoman's job in ensuring that we expose police officers to environments that they're most likely to work in. On the flip side of that, we have to continue to do a yeoman's job in our community at recruiting officers who grew up in this community.
Okay. And
that's hard to do right now. Yeah. It's hard to do. I could come to your church right now, Pastor Webster, and talk to a young man and say, good young man on his way to college, doing good things. Man, you ever thought about being a police? Man, they look at me and say, hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah.
Not even thinking about it.
Right.
So, we have to change the narrative in our community that says, yeah, police got some problems. My wife's an attorney. I say lawyers got some problems.
Right.
Doctors got some problems. Pastors got some problems. Right. Every profession's got some problems.
Don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Officer, not the pastor.
You're right. I'm sorry. But every profession has some problems, but we have to continue to make Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department attractive if we want to change the narrative. I'm not saying that you necessarily need a black officer.
Right.
But the reality is if you're a white officer or a Caucasian officer, from some small county that hasn't experienced urban communities, hasn't experienced black and brown people, it's going to be a culture shock.
Right. That's
and then
true.
we throw you right on late shift. Right, because that's where most of our new officers go. That's where we're the shortest. We throw you right into the neighborhoods.
But I think, officer, and seeing with that's why some of the pushback we get from the community is that why are we hiring young white officers from rural areas and bringing. So that's some of the narrative that we get.
Right.
So, I don't know how to handle that.
I think because we got to have police officers to take the 911 calls.
Right.
And, I always say we ain't got to recruit for the white males because they coming.
They're coming.
They coming to
really.
They're coming to any police department.
Right.
Really,
and you need them. Right. I'm not saying you don't need them. So but where we struggle is on the black and brown and the female component. We just are not strong there, even though we have a full-time recruiting unit. They go to all the black schools because that's the first thing I get usually is when people say, well, they ought to go to Central State.
Yeah.
They go to Central State every year. They go to Kentucky State. They go to Kentucky State.
Schools.
HBCUs. We have leading our program, Commander Ida Williams, who's a black female.
Very familiar with her.
Yeah, you guys know her.
Yeah, we know her.
She's been leading recruiting for a number of years. She's talked to the fraternities. She's talked to the sororities. It's just tough.
But did the whole Black Lives Matter movement set that back? I know my son was interested in going into law enforcement. I think my daughter, but after the Black Lives Matter movement and what I felt like was the demonizing of all police, they no longer wanted to be a police officer because of that, and I think the black community wants more black officers, but have we contributed to the atmosphere that is now discouraging blacks from going into the profession?
I think absolutely. I mean, you look at the defund moment. I talked to a prominent community leader in our community. He said, if the police leave, I'm going with them. Right. And that's the attitude we got to have. Now, so yes, I think all of that has played into this devalue of policing. Right. We just don't see it as a noble profession anymore. We don't see it as a way of helping. We don't see it as, and we own some of that. Okay. On how we, Joe, you mentioned the murder of George Floyd is a prime example.
Right. Or the Tennessee situation.
Yeah, that's right. There. Yeah. Memphis. Yeah. I mean, you see these images happening in our community, and I mean, we got to do a better job.
But going forward, though, I think there are still ways that we can, going forward, raise the banner. For law enforcement, I think there are ways to do that. And as I said to you earlier, we are for good policing.
That's right.
God knows Romans chapter 13 talks about that. You don't bear the sword in vain.
That's right.
But at the same time, we're not for bad policing.
That's right.
So I think that, and then with systems in place, in accountability, I think we can raise the banner. And then also, if there's those that need to be weeded out, do that as well.
Get them out. Yeah, I mean, I say this all the time. I mean, with all the training I get, 26 weeks of academy training, we're required to do, I think it's 16 hours. We actually do 24 hours of in-service training every year, from the police chief down to the lowest patrolman. I say even with all of that, we still are in a place where I think we don't trust police, and in certain communities we continue to villainize the police, and what I guess what troubles me the most is we don't look at it at a sense of we're trying to get the police department better. We're just trying to, some people in our community are trying to destroy the police. We just don't want the police, and so that narrative carries out throughout the community. And it's very difficult for someone who's, young, maybe not exposed to law enforcement to say, I want to do it, because right now, today, it's not something that we hold at a high esteem.
Right.
Excuse me. And it's very troubling to me. I mean, as I come through this period, I'm not at the end, but I'm getting close. 26 years I've been doing this job. Right. I'm a lot closer to the end than I am the beginning.
Yeah.
And even when I first started, I looked, the reason I got in law enforcement, it wasn't because, I always wanted to be a policeman. One of the reasons was there was a IPD officer. His name is Kenny Smith. He's now with the FBI, who took an interest in me and said, "Young man, come with me." And, he was an opposing guy. He was like 6'2", 6'3", big guy, Right. So, that probably had something to do with it. I'm looking up this guy, he's in his uniform. He would spend time with me. And when I got old enough, he took me on ride-alongs, and that started that interest.
Okay.
And he was coming at it from a perspective of, you can help your community. He grew up here, too, just off of 30th and MLK. And I'm saying that
that's a good testimony.
We got to start to have, I'll be honest with you. I think I've told you this for past years. My experience with the police, I was in college. I haven't told this story to very many people, so this is probably it's going to be tough to tell.
Yeah.
I was in college. I was a sophomore at Ball State University, and I had just pledged the greatest fraternity in the world, Kappa Alpha Psi, Fraternity Incorporated. And a part of our colors was red. Well, our colors are crimson, but actually red.
Right.
So I was actually back home. I remember it like it was yesterday. And it was race weekend, and my buddy he was not Greek. I was helping him move, and we had a U-Haul right there, 16th and Lafayette.
Right.
Everybody know that story.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And we were coming out, and traffic was crazy, right? And people were telling us, "Yo, come on out." So he edges on out, but the turn lane to get onto Lafayette Road to go north on Lafayette Road, they just kept going. So we ended up blocking traffic, and I admit that.
Right.
Well, there was this, of course, the traffic officers were out there that day, and of course, one of them came down, and boy, he was yelling at us, "Get that effing truck out of here!"
Right.
Me being a young guy, said, "Man, he shouldn't talk to us like that.
Right.
That's not right." So I told him that's not right. Well, when I got out of the truck, which was wrong.
Right.
Talk about that, not obeying the lawful command.
Right.
When I got out that truck, he saw that red, he saw that KA sign with those pitchforks and me having my bandana, and I know he thought I was a gang member.
Right.
And boy, that was the worst mistake I made. He ended up putting me on the ground, and just my dad came. All the police come there.
Right.
My dad came. My buddy's dad came. And we were just fortunate enough to know a police officer who knew him.
Right.
And he came to the scene. He said, "Listen, this kid is a good kid.
Right.
We need to get this kid a break." And the officer was like, "I ain't doing nothing."
Right.
They ended up working it out. And everybody remember the Club Mecca?
Yep.
That used to be there off of 28th Lafayette. He said, "The only way I'm going to let this kid go is he's going to get in the wagon, going to get in the paddy wagon, and we're going to drive around to the it was something else then. I think it was bowling alley. He's going to drive around there, and then I'll take, he can get out and we'll take the cuffs off and we'll call it even."
Okay.
That was my experience. That was my experience with the police.
Yeah,
and people ask me, "Well, when you got on, did you ever go look for that guy?" I didn't. I wanted to, but I didn't. So if he's listening, you was wrong.
You was right. This is Real Talk with Reverend Terry Webster Sr. and Reverend Charles Harrison. And our guest for a few more minutes is Kendale Adams, who's Deputy Chief of IMPD. One of the questions I want to ask you, in light of what has happened, there are some leaders in our community that have asked for the Department of Justice to come in and investigate IMPD and these police action shootings. How do you feel about that, and what's the sentiment within the department?
No issues.
No issues.
As of today, we actually, I think since August, we have referred our cases to the FBI, which is the arm of Department of Justice. That's the investigative arm of Department of Justice. They actually look at our Austin-Val shootings, and if they feel like there is a federal, they will forward that to the U.S. Attorney's Office for appropriate charges. Now, what I often all the time get is, is the Department of Justice looking at us as for pattern and practices?
Okay.
Kind of a consent decree.
Right.
I'm not aware of that. I know the shootings that they have looked at, and there's still some pending with them. I know the ones we've gotten back, they've cleared as not an issue. So yes, I think the police department Chief Taylor has no issue with the FBI looking at this, looking at our officer-involved shootings. I think it's a good thing for us. It creates a sense of accountability.
Okay.
And so we'll continue to do that. I'll be honest with you. We've actually had state police look at one of our shootings. We call it our crime guns.
Okay.
Those officers were involved. The one on Keystone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Actually, state police took that lead on that investigation. So, in other states, what you see is a bureau through the state
Right.
that goes and looks at all investigations. For example, in the state of Georgia, they have a Bureau of Investigation. So anytime a police department, no matter what police department, they will dispatch investigators to actually look at the criminal aspect of that investigation. We would be okay with that too.
Doesn't the state police do that for smaller towns in Indiana?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
Okay.
Our investigators on the CERT are seasoned homicide investigators, some of the best in the state.
Right.
And so I have complete faith in their investigations. Our investigation have led to indictments. Okay. It's not something we're proud of, but
right.
I say that to say that I have faith in the investigations that are being put forward today.
Okay.
We work very closely with the prosecutor's office to ensure the probable cause has what it needs for them to give it a fair and impartial review. So it's not just our investigators, it's the crime lab. So we try to take all of that information, but I feel very confident in what our investigators are able to do, but we have no problem with the FBI or even, we've done state police in at least 2 investigations since I've been here, Deshaun Reed and now the one on Keystone that they've taken a look at. Now, Deshaun Reed obviously came in after the fact.
Right.
But the point is they still gave it an independent look, and they affirmed what our investigators had determined.
I think one final question for me and then Pastor Webster, if he has one. Listening to you today, if we're not really having any more police action shootings than we are normally having, and I don't know where Indianapolis compares to other urban cities, I don't think people are aware of that, and maybe because of social media and the way the media is portraying it, it makes it seem like what's happening this year has been abnormal.
Yeah, I think what's abnormal is we've had, I think, 1 and 2, 3. So we've had 4 in September.
Okay.
And then we've already had 4 in this month.
Okay.
And so that compression of time is, I think, what is kind of drawing attention to.
Okay.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I've been on every one this year.
Right.
It is pretty surprising to have one earlier this week and then have another one just yesterday. Mm-hmm. They just usually don't happen that quickly. So we're looking at potentially Chief Taylor, Chief Bailey are looking at bringing in a national group, like a police executive research forum, to look at these and say, is there something else we can do? I always look at whenever we, injure or kill someone, we have an obligation to say, what could we have done better? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we determine nothing.
Right.
But sometimes we determine we could have used more time, we could have used more resources, less lethal. So we want an independent organization, a nationally recognized organization, not something local or regional. We want to try to get someone with some credibility in our profession to come in and look at these individually and say, is there something else we can do? I know one of the things we do at our training academy is ICAC, Integrated Communications, and it's through PERF. Okay. And it's teaching officers how to, for better words, de-escalate, communicate, use time, make good decisions. It's teaching officers kind of how to process that. So that's something we're training to now. And I think it's something we'll continue to train to. But there may be other things like we've talked about, less lethal shotguns and things like that we can bring to bear to try to alleviate the need to use lethal force.
Well, let me ask you this, because you just raised another question in my mind. Doesn't the dynamics on the ground also impact how police address a certain situation? If there's more guns out there and people seem to be willing to use them, does that also impact, because I know y'all want your officers to go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that also impact how y'all are dealing with these situations? I don't know if the public, and Pastor Webster, I don't know if I'm out there in the streets with 10 pointers. Some of the stuff I see today, I wasn't seeing 24 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's much more, I think, challenging out there, and our job is much more challenging because people are so quick now to pull out those guns and go from 0 to 100, and people end up getting shot and injured or shot or killed. And I just wonder, will y'all also look at, is there things changing on the ground that is also impacting decisions of officers?
Yeah, I think we're going to try to look at all that.
Okay.
Or we're going to make recommendations to whatever company we select to look at that. One of the things I said earlier is I talked about the training and all that. And we do a lot of training. But at the end of the day, when we take that uniform off, when I take this suit off, I'm just Kendale. I'm a human. And how we tend to think of police as like machines,
right?
That they're not, that they're infallible, that they don't have fear,
right?
That they're not scared at times. Well, I can tell you when gun is at play, and folks are fighting for their life, they scared.
Absolutely.
Wow.
They scared.
Right.
Just like you would be.
Right.
Somebody, if you walk in the store today and somebody pull out a gun, they might be legally authorized to carry it.
Right.
Somebody go in that store and pick out a gun. I guarantee you're going to perk her up a little bit.
Right.
And so police are the same way. Right. And so to your point, yes, I think, we're going to try to look at all that to ensure that our officers have, the appropriate context, right? One, you got to realize that in urban communities and in suburban communities, everybody has a gun. Yeah. So let's start there.
Right.
So when you see that gun, that doesn't give you fear. Now, officers are having to make split-second decisions. We can sit with the community and evaluate these incidents, and that's fine, but we're doing it in the comfort of our own little chair.
Right.
We're doing it in virtual rooms where we got time to slow down the video. What officers are faced with, having to make split-second decisions that could mean the preservation of their life or the life of someone else.
Right.
And that's a tough place to be in. And sometimes they get it right. I would say most of the time they get it right, and sometimes they get it wrong.
And so, officer, I don't have a question, but at the end of the day, we pray for you guys. And not only do we pray for you, we appreciate the work that officers are doing in our community. And we hope that we can get others drawn to the profession itself. And I think that takeaways is that we have to go back to champion law enforcement, because we never want to be in a community where it's lawless. But at the same time, you all continue to do the training and go forth with the training that you all are putting forth. And we'll continue to drill down on how we can bridge and be that buffer and that advocate for good, healthy law enforcement.
I just want to say real quick, Pastor Harrison, I love this community.
Amen.
I do.
Amen.
I love this community. I think it's one of the best communities in the country.
I agree.
And the reason I joined the police department is to help people. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that's why I joined the police department. And I think as we go forward, that's not to say the police are perfect. We certainly have some challenges within the profession, and I continue my commitment to this community. I will continue to work hard. I will continue to be dedicated to eradicating bad policing.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Because nobody wants it.
Right.
It doesn't do us any good.
Right.
And we believe that.
Right.
But what I need from our community members is a commitment to ensure that the people in this community respect law enforcement and do their part.
And so my commitment to you today, from me, certainly Pastor Harrison echoed the sentiments, and that we will do just that.
Right,
make sure we commit ourselves to bridging the gap, being an advocate for good policing in our community, trusting that you guys will go out and get the job done.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Deputy Chief Adams, for joining us.
I'm ready to keep going.
I know you are on this short notice. We got him in here today, and we thank you so much for joining us on Real Talk. This has been Real Talk with Reverend Terry Webster Sr. and Reverend Harrison. We try to bring you Real Talk every week about the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. And we thank you so much for joining us, and we pray that you have a blessed and an awesome day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.